going to start by introducing today's speakers. First, we have Hexel, Colorado. Hexel is a Dallas native passionate about housing, transportation, and zoning. Car-free since 2022, Hexel advocates with Dallas Neighbors for Housing, the Dallas Bicycle Coalition, and the Dallas Area Transit Alliance. Serves as chair of the DART Citizens Advisory Committee and is the founder of Dallas Urbanists, STLC. So first, give an applause to Hexel. Yay, thanks for being here, Hexel. And now I'm going to introduce Imani. Imani Chet Lido. Did I say it correctly? Imani?
Yes, Imani Shea Lytle, yes.
Great. Imani Chet Lido is the communications coordinator at the Better Block Foundation, a Dallas-based urban design nonprofit dedicated to educating, equipping, and empowering communities to transform their environments. In her role, she brings the organization's mission to life through storytelling as a photographer and videographer, while also managing its social media presence. Imani has created marketing campaigns and materials for more than 20 community projects nationwide, helping amplify local voices and share the impact of Better Block's work. So, with it all set, let's give an applause to our speakers. Yay! I'm going to stop sharing. And Imani and Hexel, we are all ears.
Well, thank you, Paula, for the introduction. And I'm really honored to be here along with Amani. We've prepared a quick slideshow to kind of give an overview about the campaign that just concluded earlier this year on parking. And this is a slideshow I prepared, I gave at YimbyTown. So I'll kind of run through this about 5-6 minutes. But before I do that, Amani, do you want to have some, say introductory words before I hop into these slides?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you all about what it means to create visual storytelling, especially when it comes to certain conversations like parking reform. And so I've been working with Hexel for the last few years, but last year we really got to work together on creating a video, sharing the stories of local businesses who've had struggles or their inputs about what issues they ran into with parking reform. And with this video, we really were able to use our platforms to help amplify these voices. And so I'm very excited to share some of the things that we've learned along the way. So yeah.
Yes, so we'll jump right in. You see in this cover slide, actually, you can see the faces of some of the people involved in this campaign, including Amani. And looks like we're both wearing our copy of the It's Hard to Find Parking in Great Places shirt. And so this is, Imani, is this, everywhere? Oh, wow, you even got the number on the back. I'm sure some people are going to ask, because when I went to YimbyTown, everybody asked this. So since it's going to be on people's screen the whole time, is there a way for people to get this shirt? Because I feel like people are going to, that's one move up.
Absolutely. I can share a link where you can purchase this shirt on our website. Yes, it's a very popular t-shirt. So we'll share that with you all.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's jump right in. Go to the next slide. So I've already been introduced, but yeah, my name is Hexel Colorado, pronouns he, him. Don't let my last name fool you. I'm actually from Dallas. I don't have anything to do with the state of Colorado, but I founded Dallas Urbanists, which is a strong town's local conversation. And I'm a member of several organizations, including Dallas Neighbors for Housing, which is a chapter of YIMBY Action. You can contact me there if you have any other questions. Next slide. So in this brief presentation, I'll give a very quick tour of what happened in Dallas when it comes to parking, just so you have the context of where this video fit in, and you can start to think about where your video or what your content or media might fit in your story that's happening in your city. I'll touch on the storytelling elements. So of course there's the video, but there was also the long form video as well as some short form videos that we did, as well as some non-video stuff that kind of supports the whole effort. Some tips for finding allies, because what you'll see is an integral part of this storytelling is finding other people bringing in as wide a tent as possible to show that this is not theoretical, this is not hypothetical, this is real problems, real challenges that parking reform is solving today for people who are living in your city today. And then I'll touch on briefly, where do we go from here? But also just kind of from there, that's the end of the slides, and then we'll kind of have a back and forth conversation between myself and Amani, and any questions maybe Daniel has as moderator. So let's go next slide. All right, so very quickly, what happened in Dallas? 2019 is when, and in fact, Imani, if I get any of these details wrong, feel free to chime in and say, actually, it was like this or that. But my quick overview bullet points was we had a champion on council who helped push this forward. And so he initially initiated in 2019. And so converting that into a tip for you guys, if you don't already have a champion in council that you can have these constant conversations with, that was a huge help for us, because throughout this campaign, I was getting text messages from his staff, like about major things to watch out for, major hearings, major meeting dates. 2022 is when it went to ZOAC. And the way I like to describe it to people is, if you've never seen a code amendment or proposal make its way through City Hall, it's kind of like working its way up ladders. And the final rung of that ladder is City Council. But the first rung of that ladder is really staff. And then staff, the second rung of that ladder is zoning ordinance or some kind of committee. And I think in most cases, it's going to be your zoning ordinance advisory committee. And we were very fortunate that the first version of the amendment that passed out of ZOAC basically gave us everything we wanted. And I think a lesson we learned from this campaign is you definitely want to really stick to your guns on eliminating all parking minimums, like at that first rung of that ladder, because inevitably, and as you're going to see in these next few slides, it does get watered down. So you don't want to start off your campaign in a weak position, because it only gets weaker from there. So fortunately, we got all parking minimums eliminated as part of that approved proposal at the beginning. And there's some other things, I won't hang on it too much, but you'll notice that there are 3 other things that were in that proposal. Now, if you go to the next slide, then 2024, it was presented to the City Plan Commission. And so that's the next rung of that ladder. And just like I said, it got watered down from there. And we also lost some of the other things, but also something important for a storytelling perspective, it is immensely valuable for you as an advocate to be aware of these auxiliary things that are happening in addition or parallel to eliminating parking minimums, because some of the things that are happening in parallel will help you soothe or address some of the fears and some of the valid fears people may have. And a classic example that we experienced was in Dallas, we do not have any kind of off-street loading requirement. So what does that mean? Well, we have this big problem of cars, delivery trucks, FedEx, Amazon delivery, Uber Eats, parking in bike lanes outside of an apartment or outside of a residential development. And so people had a valid concern of like, well, if you allow people to not have parking at all, would this become more prevalent? And so knowing that, well, in addition to eliminating parking minimums, we were also updating our design standards, we were adding off-street loading, and then all the things that were not part of this proposal, but we were aware that conversations we're having, like parking benefit districts, knowing what other solutions were going on in parallel helped us soothe a lot of the fears and concerns. Because one thing that it becomes very relevant is when you post these videos, you're going to have comments. And you don't want to get too lost in the weeds in all the comments. Sometimes you'll get some negative ones and you just kind of have to ignore them. But sometimes you'll post these videos and it'll start an engaging conversation, and being able to answer these parallel issues in good faith, that helps a lot. All right, so go to the next slide. Another thing that we learned, or I learned, is, remember I was talking about this rungs of the ladder. I did not know that there are other commissions a proposal could go through if you don't like the outcome of the first commission. So in City Plan Commission, it watered it down quite a lot. But after the City Plan Commission or CPC, the proposal was then taken to another commission, the Economic Development Commission, and they didn't bring it up all the way to eliminating all minimums, but they actually made some sizable improvements on like eliminating more parking than we would have previously. So that version, which was better, was approved at EDC. And then that version is what was presented to council, and that's what got passed by 14-1. And so those are the numbers that you see on the back of Imani's shirt. All right, next slide. Oh, yeah. Imani, want to give them a quick turn? Yeah, there you go. 14-1. So reform highlights. If you go to the, later on, if you check out the Dallas Urbanists on Substack, I have a full article that kind of breaks down the nitty-gritty details of what passed and what didn't pass. But here's the quick highlights. No minimums downtown, no minimums within a half-mile radius of light rail. We reduced from one car per bedroom to one car per unit, which is massive. I mean, if you imagine like if you had an apartment that was like 2 or 3 bedrooms, well, that would A, possibly prevent you from getting 2 to 3 bedroom units, and then B, just massive amount of parking. Reduced parking by 50% for restaurants, bars under 2,500 square feet. And yeah, so those are the highlights. There were some, things that are not so great. So many plan developments were excluded from reform, and there were some major neighborhoods that were like specially carved out. That sucked. But it was a major win for the vast majority of the city, and it's something that we can kind of build upon in years to come. All right, next slide. All right, so what were some storytelling elements that we used? There was collaborative writing, which involved interviews, guest blog posts. There were some short form videos, which we'll see one of in a moment. And there was a long form video, which, well, some of you may have seen it, but we'll touch on that last. All right, next slide. So collaborative content, like before we get to the big video, if anyone's produced videos before, it's really a labor-intensive effort. There's a lot that goes into videos, from the writing process to the audio, the video, the editing. But something that you can do right away that honestly sets the foundation for your video is to write stuff. And one of the things that you can write right away, maybe even like this afternoon, is look at some existing news articles, find some existing stories from your community or from your city, and then combine those together into a summary, like listicle. Because a lot of these stories, they're great, they're excellent journalism, but doing their due diligence as journalists, like take this example here of the Graph Coffee Shop. Wonderful article. And whenever I do a listicle, I always encourage people to first check out the original, support the original publication. But the actual parking details, like the thing that you can carry forward as you're being an advocate and being a subject expert, it's kind of buried in that story, right? Like you got to learn about the owner's story and their background and where they moved from and their motivation for starting coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing that may be extremely valuable is if you take all these stories, condense it down to, okay, what does this have to do with parking? And then now you have this written thing that whenever you're having a conversation, maybe you have a 30-second elevator pitch with a council person, you can give your 30-second elevator pitch and then say, just emailed you a link to all of the concrete examples of how this is hurting our city. So summary blog posts of existing articles is a great way to go. Next slide. Also, newspaper interviews. This was the one that got me calling my mom and bragging about the advocacy work that we were doing, because I was really excited to show her, like, Mom, I'm on the front page of the newspaper, and my name is literally the first words in this story. But in addition to like taking interviews, reaching out to journalists, especially those whose beat is transportation and mobility in particular, but also letters to the editor. So there's a lot of people who would write their letters to the editor and it would appear in their letters to the editor column. So getting some newspaper exposure is a really good way to kind of start branching out. And also, there's a lot more supporters than you may realize in your city. And so what's cool about having these newspaper interviews is people who feel like, oh, I saw the Strong Towns video, I saw Parking Reform Network's content or whatever, but I think I'm the only person in my city who cares about this. Well, when this story went out, that's when me, I'm sure Better Block as well, we started getting flooded with emails and texts and communications about, hey, I thought I was the only one. How do I get involved? What do we do next? So newspapers are really good for that. Next slide. Other collaborations, again, Parking Reform Network, Strong Towns, EMB Action, all have great blogs and articles that you can reuse in your local advocacy. We've been very lucky. I think the entire country is lucky to have authors like Henry Grabar and the late Donald Shoup. Henry has fortunately not passed away, and so he's still doing a lot of online webinars. And we brought him to do webinars with our local advocacy groups as a subject expert and with a book. Um, and then, we've also done in-person panel events. So basically like what you're experiencing now, but in person. And we've also gone out to other groups and kind of given this type of presentation to their monthly meetings. And this is a really good way to kind of, again, spread your umbrella, spread your tent, and find more people who, frankly, you can easily find more of advocates in the climate space, housing, transportation. Maybe there's a public transit advocacy group in your town. There's ways to reach out. All right, next slide. All right, so here is we'll show a sample now. You can go ahead and open that. I think the video can do the talking for me on this section. Paula, do you have is the video open?
Yes, I'm going to stop sharing and then share the video.
Okay.
Okay.
And while she's pulling that up, so this is a 60-second version of a long form video. And what's really neat about something that I feel like I learned in retrospect from creating this video is that it's a really good opportunity to let the algorithms do the work for you, or because there's a lot of people out there who've seen the videos, who've read the books, but they feel like they're the only ones. And so a big value of these short form social media content is the algorithm will pick up what people are saying, what caption you put in there, and realize, oh, this is a video about parking reform. The algorithm knows who the parking interested people are, and they'll show it. So go ahead and hit unmute. It looks like it's hit the beginning, so you can listen to it now. You might have to click it. Oh.
What's
Hey
happening?
Dallas, let's talk about parking. The City Planning Commission is considering a proposal that would remove the city's outdated and overly complicated parking requirements. We collected stories of local small businesses hurt by parking mandates in Dallas.
It's been very heart-wrenching because my growth has been stopped by 2 parking spaces.
Things are going really well for a year and a half, and suddenly out of the blue, this guy comes in and he says that, hey, you guys aren't supposed to be open past 7 because you guys don't meet the parking requirements. Code compliance came by and they gave us a citation, and this is the first I ever heard about it. I'm like, what happened?
It held up construction, permitting. We had no idea how hard this would be. The timeline for this is like multiple years. I think the parking requirements are crazy, and it is a huge impact on businesses, especially small businesses. I would like to add that I think this can be solvable. It is solvable.
Right now, we have an opportunity to make a very positive, very forward step in enabling our city to grow, to compete, and to serve its communities better.
All right, so thank you for sharing that. You can check out that on the Dallas Urbanists and the Better Block Instagram. And that was just one of the videos we did, although that's the only one that we did that was tied to a larger video. We also created some explainer videos. So there's a video about 6 myths about removing parking minimums. There's a video where I kind of use an analogy to explain why if you eliminate parking minimums, it doesn't necessarily mean you eliminate parking. That's a fun one. I'll just, leave it at that. But also, and I'll touch on this very briefly, what we found extremely effective, or really surprisingly effective, was showing people the history of the city, and showing what life in the city was like before cars. Because one thing that I'm always running into is people, okay, like story of this video at the end, and if I definitely recommend checking it out afterward. But I made that last video, that downtown Dallas 1939, in the middle in the middle of one of the public hearings on the parking reform. And so I was online, I was watching it virtually, and people were coming in one after the other, kind of saying, Dallas isn't uh, built for walking, or Dallas isn't a transit city, or we need our parking. It's always been parking, and Dallas is a city built for the car. And so when people just kept coming and saying that one after the other in that committee hearing, I was like, okay, that's, I mean, objectively not true. And so fortunately, I found some footage, or someone had previously published some footage about what Dallas looked like in 1939, some rare footage. I turned that into a little social media clip saying, hey, this is what Dallas looked like before parking. And that like spread like wildfire. A lot of people latched onto that. And the reason I'm going to bring this particular example up is uh, that's one of the things you'll run into. I think everywhere you'll run into in American cities, people assume that their city was built for the car. And because it was built for the car, it cannot be rebuilt or reshaped for anything else. And so if you can show people what your city looked like before cars, um, then that shows an example of what it could be again or in the future. Like if it could have radically changed from this, then why not radically change to something else? All right, so next slide. Some other things that, again, complement the videos, but are a little easier to produce than videos are carousel slideshows. So these are things that we made that basically are like, again, the same format as the video, but in written style and format, so these are a lot more shareable. And next slide. All right, and then this was the big project that we worked on together, Better Block and myself. And I'll kind of finish out the rest of these slides and let Mimani talk about her thoughts on this video. But the thing I'll share on this is, if I were to do this again, I'm very proud of the video. I would still do the video, and I would still do it the way, the way that I did it, but I would have maybe chunked it up more, and because it took a lot of time to work on each of the chapters. Um, and uh, and I'll let Imani talk about like the interview process of how she found people to interview and what it was like getting them into a room and recording. So the division of effort on this was Better Block handled the finding, outreach, bringing people in, interviewing and recording. Then after they had recorded these, interviews, then me and my volunteers at Dallas Urbanists, we took that and edited and did post-production and finally publishing of this video. In retrospect, I would have definitely tried to like make it smaller projects that ultimately led to a big one. My thinking at the time was I would make one big video and then chop that up into shorter ones, but that meant that it took a long time. It would have been nicer to get things out sooner. So hard lesson that I learned that you don't have to. But this video was really exciting to work on. And I've been talking a lot, so I'll let Amani, get to this as soon as I finish these slides. But next slide. There was other things that appeared on podcasts. So when this video came out, then a lot of people started noticing, and so we started being able to go around and talk to other groups about it. Next slide. And then some tips for outreach. And Imani can even expand on this. We're on the second to last slide. But you can visit businesses directly and ask them about their parking struggles. And you'll be surprised how many people will openly and willingly just tell you what they're struggling with. Because, if we're right about the negative impacts of parking, then there's a lot of people who are today like closing business or facing a business loss or unable to start one because of parking. And businesses was like the focus of this particular video. I'm sure, but frankly, we thought this campaign would go longer than it ended up being. So we were imagining making another video on like the climate activist perspective of it, like the housing advocates perspective on it. And so maybe someone who's watching this can maybe do those videos. But uh, you can talk to people directly, and there's real problems that people are facing now. But framing the messaging about people, what people have to gain through parking reform as opposed to what they have to lose was a big game changer. Next slide. Last slides is anytime you are putting out social content, make sure you don't lose that opportunity to like kind of bring people into the fold. Always have like a contact person for your campaign or some way for people to get connected, and maybe even include like the next event or next hearing that people need to show up to. And then the last thing that I would like big tip that I learned just towards the end was go to these CPC meetings or these committee hearings and look at the agenda, because chances are there's a lot of people who are getting rejected by CPC because they don't have the parking minimums, or they're just kind of like every day the CPC is hitting them over the head because they don't have enough parking. And there's almost like a factory churn of people who could be your ally by just attending these meetings and then hitting them up. So that's something that I highly recommend. Next slide. All right, and then where do we go from here? Well, where do we go from here is I turn it over to Amani. But I'd say that there's a lot more for us to do in Dallas. Dallas proper is only 1 million out of an 8 million person metroplex. So there's still more to fight to be done. And video has proven to be a very effective tool in this fight. So with that, I'll turn the mic over to Mani to give her comments.
All right, thank you. And great job, Hexel, on the presentation. I don't have any slides really to share, so I don't know if we want to just go back towards like the graphics of showing how we did the outreach of the project. But with Better Block, with our position behind this whole campaign was getting the interviews. So if you watch the full form video, you'll see that we worked with 5 different local businesses in Dallas that we actually did an open call if you saw those graphic slides before, we did an open call on our socials and in our networks, and asking businesses, has this been an issue for you? And so we did that open call, and we've had people who've reached out to us, or we had connections already that we worked with before in previous projects. And we knew that they were having issues, like with Ruthie's. We've worked with them before. We helped them actually from a previous project with about 2002. They were just a pop-up, but with the project that we helped with Better Block, they were able to eventually have a brick and mortar location across the street from the Better Block site years later. But then they ended up having issues, and construction kept being slowed down simply because of parking, and where all that parking really wasn't needed, but they had to accommodate to all that. So what we did, we gathered in, we got the interviews, and we wanted to learn their stories. We wanted to hear what their issues were, their struggles. And some had some successes, were able to still open up their businesses. Some were not able to because of the parking reform and hadn't passed yet. And so this was still a good opportunity to create a story that can be shared not just in Dallas, but this video that we worked with Hexel and the Dallas Urbanists has helped us as Better Block with other projects we do around the world. So we're based in Dallas, Texas, but we travel all over. As you see in the back, we have a CNC plywood map in the back, and it kind of shows locations that we've been at. So doing focusing on certain issues like this and creating short and long form content helps us pitch about other projects in different cities that are going through the same thing, or maybe not going through the issues, but they can learn about the challenges that we're facing here in Dallas and how we're overcoming it, how we have the skill sets to share these stories and use our platforms for the communities to talk about what's going on and be able to share this during the city meetings and the council members. And I think this was a really great step towards getting the parking reform passed. So yeah, I would say look at your local advocacy, working with Hexel and Dallas Urbanists has been great. And we work with a lot of other partners and organizations in Dallas that their mission aligns with us. And so it's us coming together, us going to the city meetings together and, talking about it in volumes, and letting them know that we're being consistent showing up. And that shows that we're not going to let this slide. And we have the videos, we have the stories of the community actually saying that this is an issue. And if you want Dallas to grow and to change and support, here, here we are. We created a video to share their voices, and we put it in the front lines, and now they know the truth. And so, yeah, I would say that this project has really helped me realize again the importance of visual storytelling and interviewing and reach and getting the voices and the stories out there for people, because other than that, if we're not talking about it, nothing's really going to change. And so it's been a really great opportunity to work with Hexel on this, and it has helped me professionally grow and learn not just from this, but other better Block communities that we work with. And I'm learning the type of questions to ask about what is the community looking for to help thrive and up their communities through placemaking and urban design, but also through policy changes. So that's another big advocacy that we're leaning a lot more towards on with our mission at Better Block. So yeah, those are kind of my inputs that I've got from this project as well.
There was one question I saw in the chat, which was, was this just Google Earth that I used for the video? So it's specifically Google Earth Studio. So for anyone who's watching this and like, oh, I want to make a video just like that, what you're going to want to do is go Google Google Earth Studio. And when you go there, it's going to ask you if you want to to apply or to sign up. As soon as you apply, you're going to get an email like 5 minutes later saying you're approved. I don't know why they even have that like kind of apply gate there, but so it's once you go through that formality of applying and getting approved, it's a free tool and allows you to do all of it allows you to do the 3D kind of like aerial shots that are like timed and animated. From there, if you or someone, you can find a volunteer to help with like adding the extra stuff, like making a building highlight or adding a little annotation, then you can export out of Google Earth Studio and have someone kind of do that. But one thing I'll also add is just from a technical perspective is things that I wish I did in hindsight is I wish I divided that effort up. And so if you're not a technical person or not a person who can edit video in a very fancy way, but you can look up something on Google Earth and you can like hit a button and hit download. I wish a tip is if you have a team of people or volunteers, have one person be in charge of gathering those location shots, and then have another person in charge of the actual editing. So you have a kind of a pipeline. Because on this project, I didn't know what the entire process was going to look like, so I kind of did all of the editing, or most of the editing from front to back. But now that I've kind of seen the whole process, that is one of the things I would have chopped up, is have other people do the location grabbing. And so that's one less thing that your editor has to deal with. So with that, I think we can take some other questions if there are any.
There, okay, yeah, we're switched to the grid mode here. We have a small enough number of people in here. I'll moderate the discussion. I got a couple questions for Hexel and Imani, but if anybody here has questions, I would suggest just either put it in the chat or use the hand raise feature in Zoom, and I'll call on you, whichever you're more comfortable with. But thank you both for the presentation. It's such a cool project and so cool to hear about it. I'm kind of behind the scenes. Um, One that I wanted to start with was, sort of stereotypically, the small business community is actually often one of the sources of, at least initially, resistance to parking reform. You get sort of the knee-jerk reaction that, like, well, my customers need a place to park. And, what if the street is clogged up with cars from other businesses that don't provide their own parking, and then my customers can't get here? And people are very convinced. And sometimes there's a little bit of projection going on, or sometimes it's grounded in really well-founded concerns or things they hear from customers. So I'm wondering, as you did your research, kind of looking for stories to tell, if you encountered anyone who really pushed back and said, like, actually, I'm a small business owner in Dallas, and I'm like not at all on board with what you're saying or what you're trying to do here.
Ooh, I do. But Imani, if you do, I'm gonna let you go first though, because
No, go for it. We might end up saying the same thing, but go for it. Yes.
okay. So, on the one hand, uh, I think it surprised me how that wasn't as universal as I thought it would be. Like I mean, even today, like, this is something that happens in City Hall, and not everybody's just plugged into what City Hall is doing. And so even after the code amendment was passed, like we would still go to like restaurants, bars, or just establishments, and just casually bring up this part, or like we'd be wearing a shirt or whatever. And then people would voluntarily tell us, oh, because of there's this brewery here downtown. It was like, oh, because of parking, we can't serve food. We can't, like, we have this great space and people can drink and build up an appetite, but then they have to go somewhere else to eat. And it's like, oh, well, that's not a thing anymore. That just became not a restriction. Um, and so on one hand, not as universal a pushback. And when it was a pushback, so an example I experienced was there was a coffee shop owner. When that newspaper story came out, I remember meeting the senior planner at City Hall for coffee, and we had the newspaper. We were looking at it. It was like I think like a Sunday afternoon, and as we were reading it, like he was a regular at that coffee shop. So the owner comes over and says, "This guy on the newspaper story doesn't know what he's talking about." And if you recall, it was me because it was my name in the first opening of that story. And it's like, this is going to kill businesses. And rather than take that opportunity, I didn't tell him it was me. But rather than take an opportunity to just start immediately defending myself or start saying why he's wrong, we started to hear him out. Like, okay, well, let's see what his concern is. And what's interesting is as he kept talking, he started basically almost coming around, like convincing himself that it was a good idea, because it's the framing that perhaps knee jerk, and maybe we got to be careful with our wording, is if it's eliminating parking, people get scared. But if it's giving businesses the freedom to decide how much parking they need and what will best serve their business, everyone's on board with that. We're not doing parking maximums in this particular year or day and age, but maybe in 10 years after we get fully eliminated minimums. But the fact that there's no maximums helped with the framing of, hey, you know how much parking, and if this passes, no one's forcing your parking away. You get to keep whatever parking you have that you still want. And so we let the guy just kind of tell us what his concern was. And he said, well, it would be good for me. Like that was his opening when he said, tell us more. Like, well, it'd actually be good for me at first, because there's these things I want to do, and it's been a pain in the butt to get these exceptions. And it would also be good for the other coffee shops next to me. And it would also be good for the restaurants like in this district. It's like, okay, I'm not seeing what the problem here is. It's like the problem is I rely on a lot of people coming and going as a coffee shop. And they're building this new apartment across the street. And then my fear is that when people move to that apartment, the people visiting them are going to park in front of my spot, and they're going to take up that come and go traffic. So when you start to listen to people, kind of resist the temptation to immediately start defending, because as you start to hear some people out, it may come out that they're not really that against removing some parking, because maybe there's some parking they want to remove, or maybe the mandates are preventing them from doing something. So that's what I would say. It's just if there's anything to avoid, it's try to avoid the narrative of removing parking altogether and just focus more on the flexibility that it gives people.
Absolutely. And I'll just follow up real quick. I'll say if it wasn't particularly just this project in Dallas with Better Block, it's our job to literally block off streets temporarily for these events to see what it would look like when it's not car centric. And so a lot of times wearing our shirt, it's hard to find parking in great places. Again, allows people to think about what that means. And so with Better Block, we're all temporary. It's not going to go away permanently. We're just let's look at a day or a 2-day event of what it looks like to activate the space where the car isn't the center of it. And a lot of people actually, once they come to the site, the community that were concerned about where do I park, things like that, they realize there's still a bunch of parking that you still have around the area. And they enjoy the idea of what it seems to be able to just walk through those businesses, those areas, and get more foot traffic than you do with cars. With a car, you got to, drive around and you got to park and things like that. But if you're doing foot traffic, you can go and stop at a cafe and then you go into your bookstore and then you go get dessert across the street at this businesses. And everyone has had the opportunity. It's great for businesses. It's great for the community to be involved locally. And so again, with working with the parking reform here in Dallas is such a big step. But we've seen that throughout all the projects that we've been through and where we practice on shutting down or taking away a few parking spaces temporarily to, again, just to think of the idea. And another saying that we like to say that's also a shirt that says build for love, not fear. And so that's also another kind of thought mission that we're always on. It's like, let's not be scared of what ifs. Let's just test it out and see what can happen. And a lot of times it does open up people's minds and perspective of thinking of a different way of what we're used to pertaining to parking reform. So yeah.
There's a comment in the, oh, go ahead, Daniel.
No, I just gotta say, yeah, I love the just how far you can get by listening to people, not jumping in to argue with them, but letting it actually lead to a conversation where you're gonna learn something about their motivations and they're gonna learn something about parking, and surprising people might come around. Hexel, you were gonna say, and then we'll take another question. But you were
Oh,
starting
well,
to
yeah, I just noticing that there's a question in the comments.
go for it.
Yeah, so what style videos end up being the best, or is it a surprise? Like B-roll with voiceovers versus interviews. I would say whichever one, whether it's a voiceover or whether it's an interview, whichever shows what the subject or focus of the video is about. So if it's about like in this case, like, it's talking about people's stories, right? So like what happened. And so I think the videos that we did, it would land differently if like it's, let's say Ruthie's Cafe, like Ruthie's Cafe, Val's Cheesecake, right? It's these people. It would hit differently if we didn't show their faces, right? If it wasn't us talking to them. On the flip side, say that Dallas 1939 video, that's, it would be weird if it's just me in 2024 or 2025, like doing a talking head, just telling you about what it was like in 1939 or before cars versus just if I could just show you. And so it just really depends on what you want people to focus on. Yeah, I think that would be the short answer.
Yes, I agree. It's about what your story is about and what the focus is. And so, yes, if that means, again, you're creating that platform for that story or that voice. So make sure you're visually focusing on what that might mean. So at Better Block, we do both forms. We do a lot of in-person videos, and then we do a lot of B-roll of just showing the activations of the spaces. And I'm sure everyone knows social media now with the algorithm, it could be a hit or miss. So it's more not focusing on how much shares and likes it is, although it really is nice when it does go out there and it goes viral and it's getting conversations going, but also looking at it as a portfolio for yourself and whatever story that is saying, hey, well, I have a visual way to share what we're talking about to whoever you're trying to go to. So if that's a city council member meeting or a presentation for a potential project pitch, those visual storytellings will still be beneficial, even if it doesn't go viral per se.
Right.
No.
And Imani touched on something really important, which is don't hang your don't measure your success too much by the views. It's entirely possible. I mean, and there's some videos that I've done where like got like a lot of views, but it didn't really convert into like meaningful transactions or conversations. Whereas there's some video, like one of the videos that we did, that at first I thought wasn't that successful because it didn't get as many views as the others. I did this video on some bike lanes that were proposed. And I put a lot of work into that video, like showing where the bike lanes were going to go. I did the Google Earth 3D thing, and it it didn't do terrible. I mean, it didn't get like it wasn't like 0 views or something, but it was like if I were to compare it to how many views I got at everything else, it was on the middle lower end. But even though it didn't perform as well as some of my other content in terms of total views, it got a lot of like the people who saw it were the people who needed to see it. Because then, even though it was like low views, it got a lot of people. Whoever saw it, they clicked the link, they took the survey, they did the vote, they sent the email. And so even if like a fraction of your video count sends, interacts with it, that's way better than you get it goes viral, but nobody really, they get a laugh, they like, and then they move on. So there's an element of if you're creating hyper local content, you're not going to get like the million views. But if you're creating hyper local content that people can act upon, then even if it's like 100 views, but like there's a dozen people who saw it and then they took a survey or they emailed a council person, that's massive. Oh yeah. She wanted to be part of the conversation. This her name's Denver. You can imagine why.
Denver, Colorado. Leaning into it. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge the time here. We're having a great conversation. I think we're happy to go to the end of the hour here. If you need to leave, because I know this was scheduled for 45 minutes, thank you for coming, and feel free to duck out. If you want to stay, we can, I think, get a couple more questions in. One that I wanted to ask, maybe a good segue from talking about measuring impact and having it not just be views or something like that. Do you know whether any of the people on the planning commission or the city council who ultimately had to vote on parking reform, do you know whether they saw your videos? Did you get feedback, or were they influenced by your storytelling directly?
I would say I know that they were influenced because I said so. And then also I would bring there was at least a couple of occasions where I met with I ran into a couple of the council members and I brought up the video. And so I hedged my bets on whether they would find it organically. But and I would say that's another way to kind of measure your success is whether people find it on their own and then they act upon it. I was very pleased to hear people tell me that they would show up to a council hearing or a committee meeting, either A, because they saw the video, or they knew about it, but then they used the video to help them inform them how to articulate the issue for themselves. And so that's another thing. You're providing material that other people can ultimately emulate or copy, because a lot of people they understand it. They've read the books. They're very smart, or they experience it, but they just don't know how to put into words, especially in words that are local or relevant to your particular neighborhood. But all that to say, it's also a really powerful thing to use as a supplement. Like if you only have a 30-second elevator pitch with a council person, it's your thing that says, hey, there's this business owner in your district, in your neighborhood. I just sent you the video where your constituent is explaining her struggles. And so having that very direct tool or weapon, or I don't want to say weapon, but like that ammunition to say, this is very relevant to you. I can't explain it right now in 30 seconds, but here's the link, and you can see it for yourself. That's very useful, very powerful. And they also voted along, I mean, 14-1, but also I had one person say, one of the council members said, "Oh, don't worry, Hexel. My city planning commissioner is going to make the progressive choice," is his choice of words. And I said, "Well, what does the progressive choice mean to you? Like, what does that mean? The right choice, progressive choice?" He said, "Oh, well, it means well," and then we had a conversation. But long story short, uh, being able to clarify and say, if you want to hear directly from what people want, here's what the video says, like straight out of the business owner's mouth.
Yeah, I would say I don't know directly about any council members. I know we've had people we've talked to, and there was definitely talk about it, and it shows with the 14-1 win on that. But also, as Hexel mentioned too, it's the business owners were able to use this information to kind of share and use it to advocate and fight for what, for their businesses as well. So it definitely was able to use that video as a tool for people, as he mentioned, to have a better way to talk about what the issues are and what we're trying to resolve. So,
Oh, and I just remember one thing. We're almost on time, but I just want to touch on this because I beat myself up. Another valuable thing that video can do over other mediums is there are some people and some stories we were not able to expose directly because part of the interesting thing that we discovered is because parking mandates really restrict or hinder people's viability, there are some businesses that are flying under the radar. There are some businesses that they wish they could tell their story, wish people knew about what struggles they're going through. But because, again, I can't name anyone, but I'll give an example. There was one business that they didn't have enough parking to stay open late or later. And they were staying later than the code allowed, but they didn't want to appear on video because if they just kind of outed themselves that, hey, we're technically breaking the law because that's what we got to do to survive, well, they can't tell that story. So the videos help tell that story that maybe some other people wish they could, but they can't because they would out themselves individually.
Okay, I think that Daniel might need to leave. So, and we're close to the hour. So maybe we can have time for one more question and that'll be it. So does anyone has another question? Then it's my question. Okay, my question is, with Reels and TikToks, do you prioritize content or time?
um, sure. When you mention time, do you mean like how long the video is or what time you post the video?
Yeah, like how long the video is.
Okay. I can just start on that one, Hexel, real quick. So for it depends again on the story, I would say. Uh, Social media can be very tricky on what that is. A lot of times they do like more short form content. So that's why it's, Hexel did a very great job having the long form and then be able to cut down a 1 minute segment of that video to give a highlight. So it really just depends on where you're posting it. I know TikTok and Instagram really like more shorter videos as well. But the power of YouTube is that a lot of people do watch more long form content from there. So it just depends on what platform you're going to and how you're trying to tell this story. I would say on that. So it's a little tricky and it's like experimenting on what works. But Hexel, maybe you have a different idea on that.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what she said and just extend it a little bit and say, I was at a Strong Towns conference, Strong Towns National Gathering earlier, and I asked some other creators the same question. And it basically comes down to uh, however long or short it needs to be to again tell the story. And even if it's short, it's short. And if it's long, well, even if it's long, the people who don't need to see it will tune out, and the people who do need to see it they'll stay tuned. And so that comes back to like maybe a longer video won't be as high view, but the people who need to see it and who maybe are looking for that information. And then with the content we created, I think one thing I would do differently is like I said earlier, I had this strategy of like we'd create one long video and then turn that into short ones. In retrospect, I would have done it the other way around, where like maybe this 20-minute video, as we're building it, we would have maybe turned the first 5 minutes into one short video and then publish that while we're kind of producing this longer one. Because I do still feel it was important to have a long form version, because there's a lot of people who want to advocate and they want to be able to just one time, like at lunch or, just sit down and absorb everything they need to know so that they can go out and do the work, the following day. So that long form was still important, but one thing I would have done differently is just put out the shorter versions as they became ready.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for those insights. I think they're very